So the first step is to get the carrier taken out of the pistol. And let me zoom in here. The carrier is retained with the pivot pin, and the pivot pin itself is kept in place with a small set screw that's in the top of the left hand sort of side of the frame. And you want to take your 1.5 millimeter hex key, and hopefully it's not too tight. There's not a lot of force on it that would make it unscrew, so it doesn't need to be super tight. And when you unscrew it, you want to sort of feel for any roughness that might indicate that the screw has been chewed up, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on that. You don't have to remove the screw completely, but you need to back it up out of it probably a couple of threads worth, and at that point the pivot pin should be loose. Now you can use a toothpick to push the pivot pin out, but you want to be careful because the pivot pin also retains the ejector, and that has a spring underneath it, so you want to put your finger on top of the ejector and then push the pivot pin out. And I didn't get the screw quite far enough, so let me give it another turn. Okay, there the pivot pin comes out, and you can take out the ejector, and the spring you can fish out on the end of a toothpick. Getting the carrier out is a little bit tricky because of the spring-loaded balls that lock it into place when it's in the upward position. And the easiest way to get the carrier out is to push it forward a bit as you rock it up. That will get the balls far enough forward that they won't snap into the holes in the frame, and you can pull the carrier up and out of place. And that gives you good access to the inside of the pistol where it's difficult to clean. You want to get as much fouling and carbon and everything out of that as possible, but it also means that you've got the carrier out and you can go over that. This one I've had apart recently, so it's not nearly as grubby as they can get. You don't have to do this super often, but probably every couple thousand rounds isn't a bad idea. So you just give that a good general cleaning. And to get down into the slot for the ejector, that's what I use the piece of plastic for. Fold the patch over it, and that allows you to get down into that slot and get any fouling out of that area. You want to wipe down the ejector, and that's about all the cleaning. A lot of the cleaning is really getting all the carbon out of the frame area. So that's what's involved in the disassembly process. I had mentioned the issue with the set screw and the pivot pin. The pivot pin can rock back and forth depending upon the set screw goes into a notch that's in the pivot pin, and depending upon how well that notch fits, the pin can rock back and forth, and the sharp edges of the notch in the pin can chew up the set screw. And if it gets badly damaged, in turn it's going to damage the threads in the frame, which you really don't want. So I actually bought a bag of 100 of the set screws. They're 3 millimeters long, 3 millimeter diameter thread with a flat tip, and they cost about 10 cents a piece in industrial quantities, so I have a lifetime supply. But if the screw is damaged, it's not a bad idea to replace it before it damages the threads in the frame. And what I've done in the past is I've used this sort of rounded edge Arkansas stone to basically just knock the sharp edge off that notch so that it doesn't chew up the screw as quickly. So once you get everything clean, we'll move on to putting it back together again.